haven't caught the ProCast yet, this is like a thing for me. Getting things to go live when they're supposed to has been a challenge for me. But I think we've got it. I'm looking here. We're live on YouTube. Hello to YouTube. And
Hello,
let me check
YouTube.
here on LinkedIn, and then we will officially kick things off. Let me see. Come on. Yep. Okay. We are good to go. So, welcome to the Minvo ProCast. I am your host, Marc, and here with me today, my friend, my ADHD coach, Brooke Schnittman. And if you haven't figured that out yet, yes, she's an ADHD coach. And she's really helped me considerably as far as things like my executive functioning skills. We'll get into what that means if you're not familiar, and really helping me manage all of the different things as a business owner, as a content creator. It can be a lot. And I thought Brooke would be really good, not because I think our entire audience has ADHD. It's really because I think our entire audience are content creators, and we're faced with a lot of these challenges of getting a lot of different pieces of information or having different pieces of our content puzzle all coming at us from different angles, trying to put it all together. And it can get overwhelming. And that is one of the reasons why, throwing out a stat at you, when we talk about podcasts and podcasters, most podcasts stop after somewhere between 3 and 8 episodes. And I think a
Mm.
lot of that has to do with burnout and overwhelm because they're not prepared for it going in. So, with all of that, let me first officially say hello to you, Brooke. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. I didn't know that stat about 3 to 8 podcasts, but I totally can see why that would happen.
Yeah, I think, well, I think a part of that is that a lot of people get that bug, they get that itch to want to do it and think that no problem, I can make this happen, and they do it and they make it happen, but they don't realize the amount of work that's involved in it. And I know that you've gone through this struggle too. And before I get into that, first, how long have you been coaching specifically around ADHD?
So I started my company coaching with Brooke in 2018. So it's been over 6 years for the company specifically. But I have my background is in special education. So I was a special education teacher and assistant director of special education for 15 years. So when I was a teacher, I was working with students with ADHD in the classroom and also pulling them out doing an executive function class. So overall 20 years.
Okay, wow. Okay. And then you, just so people know a little more about you, you were diagnosed with ADHD, but not until later in life, right?
Correct. So I was gravitated towards people with ADHD. I would always date men with ADHD. My dad would make fun of me about it. Um, why do you always go for the men with ADHD? I got my master's in students with disabilities. Like my track record was I just hung out with people with ADHD, dated people with ADHD, ended up marrying someone with ADHD, started an ADHD coaching business all before I knew I had ADHD.
Wow.
So it wasn't until 6 months after starting coaching with Brooke that when I went virtual, I realized working with adult clients that I was struggling with a lot of similar issues in the sense of paying attention to the session, then writing my notes, shifting my attention back to the session, then writing my notes, going back and forth. That sustaining and shifting attention was really difficult for me. And then it just unlocked a little bit and I started putting the puzzle pieces together. I'm like, oh, wow, I've compensated in a lot of areas, but I also, love being around people with ADHD. And this is starting to make sense that I might have it. So I officially got diagnosed in 2019.
Yeah, it only took years of work and research to figure it out that you have it for yourself. I get it.
Go figure. Go figure.
I love it. And, as I said at the top here, you've helped me out considerably with my ADHD. And actually, we didn't have enough time before the show. There are some things I want to talk to you about for me because I've been this week experiencing low dopamine. I've had no motivation for almost anything. And it
Mm,
gets really frustrating. Even with the tools, sometimes it's just when you get locked up,
Yeah.
caught up in all that, it can be really frustrating. So I might have some things I want to chat with you about later, but this isn't a session for me.
No, I know. And just side note, could it possibly be election anxiety?
Oh
Just a
man,
thought.
it could be, and I just, as far as that goes, I try not to watch too much of it to get to me. But yeah, I'm around it. Obviously, most of us are, at least in this country, all the time. So yeah, it could have a little bit to do with that too, I'm sure. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
so I want to start with your content creating career, I'll call it, because you built up a presence with coaching with Brooke, as you mentioned, the name of your business. And there was actually, I saw you post on LinkedIn when you were letting your community know about this very interview. You were talking about how you went from 3,000 followers on Instagram to today, which is closing in on 200,000. I think it was like 186,000 or something like that. You did that in a pretty short period of time, and that's no small feat. So I'd love to hear what shifted for you during that time. What tweaks or big picture changes did you make that you feel really propelled that growth for you, or was it something entirely different?
Yeah. So we went from 0 to 3,000 followers on Instagram alone in the first 3 years. And when we were doing that, when I was doing that, I should say, I, had those automated bots that would like every single post from everyone else. And then eventually they would follow me, right? Those don't really exist anymore,
Right.
from what I know. And then we would have the commenting groups where, we would on WhatsApp say when we all shared, and then we would have to comment on each other's to try to increase engagement. And then I would take a look at what was out there and like put quotes on and try to be very aesthetically pleasing on my profile, all the posts that I did, and it was me doing them. And I realized very quickly I was not growing quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I still had clients. I still was doing well business wise, but Instagram numbers were really low compared to where it is now. And it took a lot more work. And I was racking my brain. And finally, I said, you know what? There's an account that I really admire. And they grew very quickly. And they were not social media experts. They weren't selling growth strategies,
Okay.
but I saw they did it. So I want to know how they did it, right?
Yeah.
So I hired them, had a meeting with them, and I said, look, I know this isn't your profession, but I do want to pay you to teach my assistant how you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Work with her for about a month, change whatever design strategy you need, the coloring, and teach her the strategy.
Okay.
And at first, these were like really bold changes, and I was uneasy a little bit about the changes, but I
Uh-huh.
said, you know what? I asked for this, and I need to trust that they're going to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we changed our design from baby blue to a white background with call to actions being red, and we started doing carousels instead of static posts. We added memes, and we changed our content strategy, and hiring someone to do strategy, not who calls himself a strategy coach, but someone who actually did it themselves that you admire, right? Who are in the field.
Yeah.
That took off.
Okay, cool. So you found somebody that, yeah, that just called to you. You liked the way that they were doing things and asked them if they would do it. I think that's a great way to do it. And it's for me, it feels better almost sometimes than just kind of reaching out to somebody who does call themselves a strategist. Not to say that they're lying. It's just that, I don't know, it feels a little more genuine and honest when you're just reaching out to somebody who doesn't do it for a living, but you just say, hey, I admire that work, and can you help me recreate that with my stuff? I think that's a cool way to do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah. And you mentioned burnout too. I delegated this to my assistant. My assistant was not a social media strategist. She was a graphic designer by trade. So the graphics on our social media is from her. We use Canva. But instead of me getting trained and then teaching her, I had her invest all the time and then show me what she did afterwards. So that took a lot off my plate. And we also had, strategy calendars. And we both will have those accountability meetings on Mondays and Thursdays just to check in, talk about topics to share, make sure that the posts are making sense and are accurate. And then we plan like a week or two out. So it's slowly at this point, and when I say slowly, it rises about 1,000 followers every week, sometimes week and a half, because we're not doing as many videos. And I know videos are obviously ones that you can grow faster, but I personally do not enjoy filming myself, as you know.
Yes.
It just doesn't feel natural.
Why you started a podcast with video, so that you could get some video content that you could then post on social, right?
Exactly. And I have an amazing podcast editor who has helped me not burn out in 3 to 8 episodes.
Yeah, Marc. I wonder who that guy is, but I hear he's a real chump, but whatever. Yes, I do also produce Brooke's podcast. And yeah, I mean, that was something that I happen to know. And if you want to share a little bit, that you, for a long time, as much as you've had success in business and you were seeing success on social media now, you were still hesitating to start a podcast, and a video podcast at that. So tell me a little bit more about that. What was the hesitation? And I mean, look, I don't want this to be about Marc, right? Like, oh, and so I was the guy who convinced you. And yes, I probably had something to do with it. But really, what got you to that point where you were like, okay, I got to do this. I can't wait anymore.
Yeah. So I was asked by another company to co-host a webisode series, which did well. It's called ADHD Power Tools, and it's still on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So we did that for about 2 years through the pandemic. And then I knew in the back of my mind that I always wanted to start a podcast, but as you know, videoing and finding the right equipment and knowing where to post and how to post and all the little executive function details that add up and stress out an ADHD brain was overwhelming for me. I literally spent hours trying to figure out how to start a stupid podcast. I couldn't even record my course, 3C Activation, because I didn't have the right microphone. I didn't have the right studio. Like, it was just so overwhelming. So you fell in my lap. I mean, when you were my client and then we stopped working together, I said, okay, this is the time. And it probably would have happened eventually, but not as fast and not as seamlessly. I just felt like you made it very simple. You helped me with my microphone, my lighting, my camera, where to post, how to post, all of those things. And the editing piece, so that's out of my hands. So all those, again, tiny details, which we end up being big details. We overanalyze them. They paralyze us. They stop us from feeling good about ourselves. We get overwhelmed. We burn out. We feel rejection sensitivity. We have that imposter syndrome that we just can't do it, right? Everyone else can do it, but we can't do it. Mm-hmm. That all kind of subsided a little bit because I had the motivation to do it and I didn't have to think about all the details.
Yeah. And there's a few things now. There's a recurring theme, if people haven't started picking up on it yet, that you've already been sharing here. And it sounds like delegation and accountability are big parts to success when you are to avoid things like overwhelm when you're creating content or running a business or whatever that is. And I also want to dig into that. And the first question I have is, this is the question that I feel like I'm hearing from my audience, which is, well, what if we don't have an assistant, right? Like you've mentioned a couple of times, you had this social media person work with your assistant. What would you say to somebody that says, well, I don't have an assistant, so this doesn't apply to me? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I would say, how much time and energy do you want to put into social media? until it doesn't feel good anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to listen to your body. You got to listen to your resources. You got to listen to your time. Let's say you have 3 to 5 hours a week. So maybe an hour every day, Monday through Friday, or you just batch content 3 to 5 hours. So you can hire someone still that an account that you like, that you admire, and you do it. You learn the strategy until you have enough resources financially to hire someone. And when you hire someone, it doesn't have to be a full-time person either. They could be 3 to 5 hours at first. I'm not, even though ADHD is very all or nothing, like when it comes to hiring, the best approach for me has always been the slow approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. And these days you can get virtual assistants and
Anywhere.
anywhere and for very affordable prices these days. So
Yes.
it's one of those things that it's a matter of, how much of this can you take on your own, and then what are you willing to hand off? Because really there's for the most part there should be some affordable range that you can find to get a little bit of that extra assistance, like what we're talking about. And then there's this accountability piece that I've heard you mention a few times. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. If there's a content creator who is struggling, how do we get into this accountability? Who do we ask to help us be accountable?
Yeah, sure. So I would have like measurable actions to hold yourself accountable, like as easy as a Google sheet where you have the dates of the post, the times of the post, the description of the post, and the actual post on a sheet for at least a week out, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I would have someone who's going through a similar struggle as you and wants that accountability, like a friend who is motivated like you, where you can say, okay, let's agree that we're going to post. It could be the same time, it could not be the same time, but then we're going to meet once a week and say, this is what we have posted, this is what we're going to be posting for next week. Or it could be just that text message in the morning with your friend or a coach or a family member. It doesn't really matter as long as you can trust the person to know that they're motivated to hold you accountable and you're motivated to hold them accountable.
Yeah. So then maybe we should start back up a second and talk about the early signs of overwhelm. Because here we're giving these little tricks, these hacks, okay, find an accountability partner and find ways to hold yourself accountable, delegate where you can delegate. And this is all because we're trying to help people avoid getting overwhelmed. So how do you know before it's too late that you are going to go through some overwhelm? And what are those, how can you detect those early signs?
Irritability, isolation, headaches, lack of sleep, anxiety, comparison to other people more so than usual, that rejection feeling, the not being able to focus on the things that you typically are in your business, feeling more emotional than usual.
Mm-hmm. And this is probably where like journaling would be handy if you started to notice these things here and there and you could document it, like, okay, yesterday I felt this way, let me write that in there, and then see if you can start noticing a pattern.
Yeah, when your normal routines are not normal anymore, and it's hard for us metacognitively as an ADHDer to notice these things until it's too late very often. But if you, like you said, journal, or you try to reflect back on a time where you did get burned out, you were overwhelmed. What were you experiencing? What did your body feel like? What happened in your daily life? And what weren't you doing? Were you not spending time with friends? Were you not laughing? Were you not having a good time? Were you not setting boundaries? Were you not eating as much? Were you not drinking water? Were you not sleeping well? Think about all those things that could have happened. And sometimes it's hard to think about it. Maybe you need to mind map or brainstorm. Did you have headaches? Did your body get tight? And then look for that next time. And you'll know after the burnout that you're burned out, right? So if you do experience another burnout relatively soon, think about what led up to that and what you could do differently next time.
Tell
if
me
you
a little
cannot
bit
remember last time.
Okay. And tell me a little bit, you just mentioned mind mapping, and I know that's big for you. I know you talk a lot about mind mapping. And I know there are also lots of people out there that probably hear the term and don't really connect with what it is. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how somebody who this is brand new to could jump into something like mind mapping?
Yeah, I'm a visual person. So a mind map at the very basic level is a graphic organizer. If you're a teacher, if you've seen graphic organizer, it has like a bubble in the middle with stems out of it, and you can put whatever shapes on there. So there's a central theme. So the central theme in this case could be burnout.
Yeah.
And then you could put lines out of it. And what it does for your brain, executive functionally, is it unlocks and gets you unstuck from that idea. So once you start putting branches out of the central theme of burnout, your brain starts activating and starts thinking about different ways or situations you were burned out, anything that comes to mind related to burnout. And then from those branches, you do sub branches, like subtasks, whatever. Like, so say maybe one of your burnout ideas was lack of boundaries. Okay, when were you not feeling those boundaries? Or maybe a burnout idea is you hyper focused for 3 days straight. Like, seriously, what triggered that? Were you comparing yourself to someone else and that got you into hyper focus? Or maybe your values and passions and purpose weren't aligned. So you had some restrictions there and you couldn't get into that flow. So you were over analyzing and paralyzed and you didn't know how to move forward. So you're burned out from your thoughts. So that's a mind map. Some people hate mind mapping. They find it difficult. So if you don't like mind mapping, another way is literally just brain dumping. So you come up with a theme. So in this case, again, burnout on top, and then you put bullets underneath it. So you just, any word that comes to your mind, and there's no judgment. And when your pen stops moving, that's when you're done with the burnout. Mind dump, the brain dump. And then you could look at that and highlight or circle the pieces that resonate with you. And let's say you find out what those triggers are. Now we have to be proactive and say, okay, how can I set myself up moving forward? What's the first step I need to take to not experience that? Just one thing.
Okay. All right. So when we have that overall theme like burnout, literally just writing down anything that comes to mind, right?
Anything.
That has to do with that and your experience with it, whether it's right now, whether it was in the past. It's just to get it all out, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then from there, just I want to make sure everybody's really clear. So from there, once we have that list, you mentioned if we're mind mapping, doing some sub branches, right? And those branches are what?
So you have the central idea of, let's say, burnout, right?
Yep.
And then from burnout, lack of sleep, stress, hormones, whatever comes to mind, lack of boundaries, right? So let's say the lack of boundaries makes you think of another idea, right? So now you have more branches off the lack of boundaries, like picking up the phone for the person that I don't like, right? Or going out too much, or not going out too much, or saying yes too much, right? So then you have those sub branches from that. And the sub branches can go out as far as you want, like a web, until you're out of ideas.
Okay. All right.
But if you just Google mind mapping or you AI mind map, you'll find an example. It's very easy to find on the internet.
Okay. All right, cool. And let's talk a little bit also about focusing. Okay, because I think that content creators are extra challenged when it comes to staying focused. And why do I say that? Because, and I'm putting content creators more in the digital camp, meaning we're anything from YouTubers to podcasters to TikTokers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're just by nature being on those platforms, we can get so easily distracted, especially people like me who have ADHD, where it's like, yeah, we'll do the thing. We'll post our stuff, we'll go and interact with people on there, we'll do all those things that we're encouraged to do, but ultimately all of those things can pull us away, and then we can go down rabbit holes. We can start getting that imposter syndrome if we start seeing content of our quote unquote competitors and thinking, oh, why didn't we do that, right? So there's so many different distractions out there as content creators. So how do we stay focused? What advice or tip would you give to a content creator to stay focused?
Mm-hmm. So you want to do what works for you, not what's suggested. Obviously, the more you post, usually the more people see you if it's good content. And at the same time, if you have good content, it doesn't matter how often you post, right? Mm-hmm. So that should also go with your commenting on posts. So if you know that you are going to have rejection sensitivity dysphoria by commenting on posts, then limit yourself from commenting and make sure if you are going to comment on your post from people's comments to engage, then do it at a time where you've already, it's not your optimal focus time. Do that as like the last thing that is not requiring much brain energy. Or try to do it while you're doing something else.
Okay.
Maybe where you're listening to music. So I don't think, if you know there's like specific things that trigger you on social media, figure out a time where you can make it more fun by doing other things, not making it your optimal focus time, because that will take over the rest of your day of work where you need to be, doing other things other than the content creation.
Yeah.
Try maybe not to do it in the morning, because that usually is optimal focus time for most people. Mm-hmm. And then know how long it takes before you start feeling that trigger. So like, test yourself. Yeah. Next time you're on social media, look at the clock when you get on there and say to yourself, okay, the second I start feeling a headache, or I start scrolling and like getting into this other person's profile and seeing their follower count, or seeing who's looking at who, I want to try to notice that as much as possible. And then I want to look at the time. Or if you feel like you're in a huge hyper focus and you can't get out of that, set a timer, like literally every 10 minutes, to just check in on yourself at that point and say, how am I feeling while I'm looking at this social media? Am I still okay? Okay, I can stay on. Am I not okay? Okay, I need to leave.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So I wanted to point out to content creators who may have heard Brooke say that and think, yeah, but the rules are, I've got to go and post when my audience is most active on that platform, and then I have to stay there and I've got to comment and make sure that I'm keeping them engaged. And look, I believe that all of that stuff is great advice and makes sense. But ultimately, if you're not taking care of yourself and doing the things that work for you, and avoiding the things that are going to ultimately hurt you or cause that burnout and overwhelm, I think it's more important to have a healthy mindset when you're a content creator than following all of the rules and tips and tricks.
Yeah.
You agree?
I mean, 100%. So I just learned that you have more of a chance of going viral on your posts if you personally post it from the same device, meaning your phone or your computer, and it has to be in the US if you live in the US, and not having a scheduler do it. So when I say scheduler, like Hootsuite, Plannable, Medical, whatever. So I learned that, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm not doing it, because I know that we post at 9 at 3 o'clock every day, because our followers, that's when they are most active, and that's Eastern time. It might not be the same for anyone listening here. So we do use a planning tool, and I do have my teammates going in there and commenting to help me with my rejection sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And helping me manage my Instagram. Because if I was just on Instagram all day, then I couldn't serve my clients in a coaching method, right? I couldn't create programs. So I'm not going to use that advice. Even though I might be losing chances on certain posts of going viral, I'm still going to be using a planning strategy because that helps me and it helps my team get it out and have content consistently.
Yeah, and proof is in the pudding. You're following your method that works best for you and with some data and strategy behind that. But ultimately, yeah, let's look at your account. You continue to grow. It continues to work for you doing it in the way that works best for you and your audience. You kind of found that happy medium.
Yeah, and I could say like people can look at my account and be like, "Well, okay, yeah, you're growing and you're not growing as fast as X person." I don't care. I'm not, right? I know that if I did funny reels, I would grow faster. But I'm choosing not to because it doesn't align with my body and I'm not good at it. I don't want to be good at it.
Uh-huh.
And I don't feel like it.
Yeah. All right. So you're going to just do what works for you. And okay, you've accepted you're not growing as fast as you could, but we don't even know necessarily if you applied every single one of those tricks, even against your will. We don't even know if they're going to necessarily work. So yeah, I think that's where you have to find that place where you're happy and you know that this is something that's going to be best for you. So yeah, I
Yes.
love that.
And I just want to say one other thing. Like I know an account that grew with less than 50 posts
Yeah.
in less than 6 months to 1 million followers. And they had no stories. And I think they posted once every few days, if anything. So that just goes to show you like those were funny, creative reels, but you don't necessarily need to do what everyone else says is the best strategy.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. And ultimately, I believe really when it all comes down to it, it's putting out content that connects with your audience. That's what's going to help you grow the fastest. So it's really understanding your audience and putting out content that they want to consume. Then you can hack through all of the algorithm tips and tricks and just keep putting out good content. And with that, creativity can be a real challenge for us as creators because we are pressuring ourselves to put out a lot of good content. And when you are putting out mass content, it might hurt your creativity a little bit. So how can what advice would you give to help us break through that barrier and get those ideas flowing again?
Yeah, so you have to be doing purposeful content. So you have to do something that aligns with your values, your mission, your purpose. If you are not aligned with it, it's going to be hard for you to be creative, right? So that's the first thing. And then you have to remove the barriers. So if your phone is a distraction, maybe don't record on your phone or have another video or lock your door if there's kids running around. Figure out what that barrier is going to be from your focus. If you know to get into flow, besides being aligned with your passion, value, and purpose, maybe you have to work out ahead of time, or you need some solitude ahead of time. All those things can help you hack your flow state, or maybe the cold showers or the cold exposure. All those things can help you get into a flow state. So aligning your message and your purpose in social media, and knowing also that when you do that someone is going to want to hear you, right? There's billions of people in the world. Someone is going to match with your agenda, whatever it is. You can hate this person, you could love this person, someone's going to align with you, right?
Yep.
You can love this glass and someone's going to love you because you love that, right? Someone is going to listen to your message. So stick with your message and continue doing it. And, right, release yourself once you've done it. So that whole, so you get creative, you get into your value, you get into your passion, you get into your messaging, you know it's going to align with someone. And then after, you like set it and forget it, in my opinion, because afterwards, right? Like I know they say to comment on your post after you post it, right? But like that's where the rejection sensitivity comes in. Oh my God, there's not enough comments. There's not enough this, there's not enough that. So if you could remove yourself after posting just for a little bit to not be so obsessed with the numbers, that will help you be more creative in your creative flow. And I know I didn't answer this too, but another thing is we all have creative flows different times. So some of us need to batch, some of us need to just do it when we feel like it. Some of us need to schedule it daily, some of us need to schedule it all in one day. Do whatever works for you. I don't care. Do whatever works for you.
Interesting. Okay. And what works for you, Brooke? Like what is your strategy to when you're trying to be creative? What do you personally do when you sit down and work on a new idea?
What do you think?
My guess is I think you do it when you're called to do it, when you feel like doing it.
Part of it. And I'm a solitude type of person, believe it or not. So when I have quiet in the morning, which is very rare these days,
Yeah, well, you have
but
three kids running around there.
yeah, when I have quiet and I have a blank piece of paper, that's where I can mind map, and that's where my creative ideas come from. And also sometimes I'll just pick up a random book or a random article and read a page, and just having other people's words in there start helping me formulate ideas.
Okay.
So very often I need an idea to trigger another idea.
Yeah. Okay.
My
Fair.
ideas have ideas.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I know that very well. So then let's dig into a different area of content creation, which I know a lot of people deal with: perfectionism. Right? It can kill productivity. I know it. I've been a victim of that from time to time. How can creators shift their mindset to focus on making progress rather than obsessing over all those little details so that it can be flawless?
I think we really do need to have KPIs or key performance indicators, because then it's less emotional, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're just looking at numbers at that point. And it's like looking at a scale. Scales suck. And at the same time, if you look at it once a week, maybe you could have more of an idea of where you are, right? So for key performance indicators, if you have a goal of posting 5 days a week or making 3 pieces of content a week, um, put that as an indicator, and there you have your friend and you holding each other accountable. I did this. I didn't do this. I did this. I didn't do this. Why do I keep resisting this? I haven't done this for 2 weeks straight. Well, maybe we need to change the strategy a little bit.
Mm.
Maybe it's not the right strategy. So um, now I have forgotten the question,
No.
but
How do we deal with perfectionism? What are some ways to avoid it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have your numbers, have the big goal that you have in mind, make it realistic, make that SMART goal, and work backwards and figure out your timelines and how many posts, how often you're gonna comment, whatever the numbers that are important, the stats that are important, and look at it. I think just separating the emotion from the data, because I know personally, and I'm sure you felt this way too, like you might be having shifts even in your business, right? And you're like,
Mhm.
oh my God, this sucks. Like I don't have enough leads. I don't have enough closes. I don't have enough form fills. I don't have enough clients. But then you look at the data and you're like, wait a second, that's not what the numbers say. I'm just feeling this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So having those numbers to help support that can go a long way. I like that. And so, okay, so let's say we've taken advantage of your tips there and we've got this idea and we've even mind mapped it, and now we've got a bunch of different tasks or things to do to make that thing come to life, right? that can in itself for me can get overwhelming when I start thinking about all the pieces I have to put together in order to make it come to
Yes.
life. So then what do we do?
Pick
How
one. Pick
just
one.
just pick
Pick
anything.
one. Pick anything as long as it can be a first step. So if there's no direct order to it and it just literally can be anything, just pick something. Taking that first step, whatever it is, and then the next week you pick another thing from your mind map. And the next week you pick another thing. And you keep chipping away at those things. And then eventually you're starting to make progress and you're starting to make momentum. And what does momentum over time equal? Do you know?
Oh, I did, and I can't remember it now. I can't remember. Momentum.
Flow.
Flow. Yes, of course.
And then confidence.
Oh, yes. Well, and that order makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And that momentum for me, I know to that advice, when I pick whatever it is, just, one thing from that list, usually what I'm going to do is go to the one that I gravitate to, like the one that just sounds most exciting, most fun, whatever that I know is
Great.
I'll dig into. And then what I usually notice is then that opens the door to doing more of the things, because as I get this thing started, I'm excited, I'm into it, and I recognize, oh, but wait, I have to now go do something else to complete this. And then I've got that motivation and I'm in that flow, and I'm happy to go and pick up that other moving part and make that thing happen so I can get back to the first one.
Amen.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, it's like the opposite of what, and I love the guy and I love the book. It's the opposite of Eat the Frog from Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy says start with a harder task, even if it's a phone call to the doctor, and then everything else is easier. I say the opposite for the ADHD brain. Do the small things that make it easy for you to do it, and then you're more likely to do the other things.
Totally. All right, I'm gonna have one final question for you, and I want to make sure that people know that they can connect with you, they can reach out to you, whether they have ADHD or not, right? If they wanted to get some more direction like this from you, you'll work with them too. So what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so Coaching with Brooke on Instagram is one way, or you go to coachingwithbrooke.com. And if you want to work with us, then there's a million red buttons that say let us show you how on our website. Click it, fill out the less than 2-minute form, and apply for a discovery call.
Awesome. I highly recommend it. I think even those discovery calls, you can learn a lot from Brooke and her team. I went through one of those before I started working with Brooke. Brooke totally intimidated me. I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can work with her. She seems too intimidating."
And you didn't.
And I didn't at first, but then I ended up coming back because I knew that was exactly what I needed. And she's not nearly as intimidating as I thought, but she will keep you on track. That's for sure. But all right, so let's then talk a little bit about building resilience for the long haul, because we know podcasting and even YouTube, it's a long game, right? And what are some habits or mindsets that you'd recommend to help build resilience and keep that fire going even when the times are more challenging?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And it's interesting because I saw on the social media post from the creator of Spartan Race that schools are giving kids off tomorrow, certain schools, to grieve the loss of the election.
Of whichever political party they're interested in. Okay.
So we as a society have accommodated, especially for young kids, and this is going to be controversial, but I think that we're not teaching people resilience enough. We're not, right? Go to school if you're impacted by the election. Go to school and talk it out and do the hard feelings and work. So same thing here. Like, you are not going to make steady progress using the strategies that I'm saying. You're not. You're going to have weeks and months where you're going to want to give up. And you're not learning that on Instagram by following these social media content creators that are like, oh, I made 100,000 followers overnight and you can too. Just buy my product.
Yeah.
Like, they don't tell you all of the struggles that they've gone through to get there. It's not going to be easy. So expect it to be hard, but you have to look over the long haul, right? How many months are you going to give this? Are you going to give it 6 months? So look at the small progress, but look at the overall progress too. It's going to have its peaks and valleys, but just like training your body, right? Like, you are going to plateau, you are going to gain weight, you're going to lose muscle, but then you're going to gain muscle, you're going to lose weight. Like, whatever your goals are, it's going to be up and down, but it's like the stock market. You're hoping that it's just going to keep going up. So expect to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good advice. And I like the idea of, just preparing yourself that, things aren't going to be perfect. And I was thinking as you were sharing that, something as simple as putting in on your calendar some check-ins every so often, whatever that cadence is for you. But I'm just thinking, like, maybe for me, that's every quarter, I'm going to check in on this thing that maybe I know is a long game, and make sure, how am I feeling about it? Is it going well? Let me check my numbers. Let me check those KPIs and see how things are going, as opposed to just kind of saying, okay, I'm doing this thing, and, when I hit 100,000 followers, that's it. That's the goal, and I'm done. No, it's really check in along the way and see how you're doing. And if it's still something you want to do.
Exactly. And I also would recommend that before you start, remember why you're doing it. So we've worked on this before. Like, I have a why funnel, and you just essentially keep asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why do I want that? How will I feel when this happens? So when you get to that failure point where you feel like you're not growing fast enough, or these people are growing faster than you, or you're comparing yourself, you're putting in the hard work and it's not going as fast as you wanted, check in with your why again.
Yeah.
And maybe take a break. It's okay too to take a little bit of a break until you get yourself feeling better again.
Yeah. Yeah. I always have to remind myself to take a break. Like, it's okay to take the break, because we get in that rat race of, we got to put this content up and do this much every day or every week. And, it's almost like we're not allowed to take those breaks and take those vacations, but we very much, I think it's necessary in order to have sanity.
Entrepreneurs do better when they take vacations, at least 7 days of vacation a year. But we have always been told our whole lives, just work harder, and it will come.
Yeah.
But, like, if you know that your body is at the verge of breakdown and you're feeling stressed, irritable, you're not seeing your friends, you need to stop, because then you are going to have an extended period of burnout, which is going to force your body to stop anyway. So just stop, do something that's fun, regroup, come back to your accountability partner and say, okay, let's start again on Monday.
Yeah. Thank you, Brooke. And this is Brooke Schnittman. And Brooke, it's coachingwithbrooke.com, like she said, or go on Instagram and look for Coaching with Brooke as well. Thank you, Brooke, for all of this insight. I appreciate doing this with you, especially for this community, because we're oftentimes just talking about all of the tips and tricks around creating content, and really not the brain behind all of this content creation. So thank you for giving us those strategies to really stay healthy mentally as we're creating our content. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Marc. Thank you so much for having me. And seriously, guys, if you are thinking about creating a podcast, or you're burning out editing your own, hire Marc and his team.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. And you're welcome to go, or if you want to stick around, you can, because I'm going to spin a wheel that has a bunch of names on it, and somebody is going to win.
I'm here. All right. I have time.
All right, good. Well, then let's do it. I'm going to share my screen here. Oops, I'm not going to present. I'm going to share. Here we go. And pull up the wheel. And what I'm going to say is, if you see your name on here and you are here live.
Oh, Christina.
Oh, it's somebody you know. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Christina.
If you're here online watching, just put a little hello in the chat, and this way I'll know that you are here, because that is one of the qualifications to win, is you got to be here for the wheel. And if it lands on your name, you will win a lifetime membership to Minvo. So let's see where this lands. Douglas. It looks like it's Douglas. Congratulations, Douglas. I'll check to make sure you were here live. And if so, we will send you all the info for your lifetime subscription to Minvo, and that's minvo.pro. And again, Brooke, thank you so much. Appreciate you. I love sitting down and doing these things with you. And sometimes I'm on Brooke's show interviewing Brooke.
Yes.
So you can come see more of that at Successful with ADHD. That is the name of the show. So please check out Brooke there. And until next time, make it a great week, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Let me just stop the other stuff and yeah, yep, we're good.
That was cool.
Yeah.
So quick question.